The lights of the America's Got Talent stage glowed brighter than ever that night. It was the middle of the season's most emotional auditions, and the judges were already on the edge of their seats after a string of unforgettable acts. The audience buzzed with energy, camera flashes dancing in every corner of the hall. And then, the stage doors opened slowly, revealing two figures walking hand in hand. A young Filipino boy, no older than 10, and his grandfather, his hair silver and thin, his steps careful but steady. The crowd murmured in curiosity. It was unusual to see a duet like this, a grandfather and his grandson on the same stage. Simon Cowell adjusted his mic, his eyes narrowing in intrigue. "Hello there," he said with his familiar tone of curiosity. "What's your name?" The boy, clutching the microphone with both hands, smiled shyly. "My name is Miguel," he said softly. "And this is my Lolo, Ramon." A warm wave of AWWS rippled through the crowd. Heidi Klum leaned forward with a smile. "How old are you, Miguel?" "I'm 10, he said proudly, and then glanced at his grandfather. "And my Lolo is 72. The audience applauded again, their faces lighting up. Simon asked, "And what are you going to do for us tonight?" Miguel looked up at his grandfather, who nodded gently before the boy replied, "We're going to sing a Filipino song." Simon tilted his head. "A Filipino song? That's new. What's it called?" "It's called Anak," the boy said with a trembling but confident smile. "It means child in Tagalog. It's about love between parents and children." At the mention of the song title, a few Filipino audience members gasped. They knew the song, a classic so filled with emotion that it had made millions cry for decades. Simon smiled faintly. "I like that, something different. All right, we're ready when you are." The stage dimmed. The first chords of a soft guitar melody filled the room. The spotlight fell gently on the boy and his grandfather. The audience fell completely silent. Miguel began to sing, his voice clear but trembling slightly. "Nong Isalong Ka Sa Mundong Ito." The familiar tune of Freddie Aguilar's Anak filled the air, and instantly, hearts began to melt. His voice carried innocence, the kind of purity that only children have. But then, halfway through the first verse, his grandfather joined in, his voice deep, rough with age, yet incredibly soulful. Their two voices blended like time itself was harmonizing, one representing youth, the other wisdom. The old man's eyes glistened under the lights as he looked at his grandson with pride and emotion, while Miguel kept his gaze on his grandfather, matching every word with a tenderness that could only come from love. The camera zoomed in on the judges. Simon's usual poker face softened as he rested his chin on his hand. Heidi clasped her hands together, her eyes watery already. Howie Mandel whispered to Sofia Vergara, "This is something special." As the song continued, the screen behind them began to show pictures, childhood photos of Miguel, holding his grandfather's hand, laughing on a fishing boat, celebrating birthdays, small moments that meant the world. The production team had asked for family photos earlier, and now they played behind the pair like a memory reel that perfectly matched the song. Raymond's voice trembled during the chorus. "Nagayon ay malaki ka na," he sang, and Miguel, eyes brimming with tears, joined in. By the second verse, the audience was no longer quiet. Some wiped tears, others held their phones up, capturing every second. Simon's eyes glistened. He leaned back slightly, exhaling. Something about that song, sung by a grandfather and his grandson, pierced through his usual judge's armor. It wasn't just a performance, it was a living story. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence, the kind of silence that means the room is overwhelmed, no one wanting to break the spell. Then came an explosion of applause. The audience rose to their feet in a roaring standing ovation. Miguel looked surprised, almost frightened by the noise, and grabbed his grandfather's hand tightly. Ramon smiled softly, patting his grandson's shoulder. Simon was the first to speak, his voice unusually gentle. "You know, I've heard thousands of songs here on this stage," he said, pausing to collect himself, "but this one, felt like watching love in its purest form. I don't even understand the words completely, but I could feel everything." Miguel looked up at him with teary eyes. "Thank you, Sir Simon." Heidi wiped her eyes. "I understood every emotion. I saw the way you looked at each other. That was beautiful. It's not about having the best voice in the world. It's about sharing your heart, and both of you just did that." Howie leaned forward, his tone warm. "There's something universal about what you just did. Grandparents and grandchildren share something timeless. You made everyone here remember someone they love." Sophia smiled tenderly. "That song was like a love letter from generations to each other. And I think everyone in this room felt part of your family tonight." Miguel looked overwhelmed. Raymond's eyes were misty but proud. "Salamat po," he said quietly, bowing his head. "Thank you very much." Simon exhaled slowly. He looked at the other judges. Then, without saying a word, he stood up. The audience began to cheer, sensing something was about to happen. He looked at Miguel and his grandfather one more time and then reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, raining over the stage. Miguel gasped, covering his mouth with both hands, as Ramon fell to his knees in disbelief. The crowd erupted into cheers, shouting and crying. Simon smiled widely, his eyes still wet. He walked up to the stage and embraced them both. "You reminded me," Simon said softly into the microphone, "that music isn't about perfection, it's about connection. You two have something truly special." The cameras captured the golden moment perfectly, the confetti shining like sunlight, the old man and his grandson locked in an emotional hug, both crying as the song replayed softly in the background. Backstage, the host greeted them with open arms. "You did it. You got the golden buzzer." Miguel was crying so hard he could barely speak. "We just wanted to sing for my Lolo's dream," he said between sobs. "What dream?" the host asked gently. Ramon smiled, still trembling. "When I was young, I wanted to sing on a big stage. But life was hard. I worked as a fisherman. I raised my children. I thought that dream was gone. But my grandson, he brought it back." The crowd backstage applauded quietly, moved by his words. In the following days, clips of their performance spread like wildfire online. Within hours, their golden buzzer audition had millions of views. Filipino communities around the world shared the video, calling it the song that broke Simon Cowell's heart. People commented things like, "I cried from start to finish, reminds me of my Lolo," and "This is what family love sounds like." But behind the viral fame, there was a deeper story. Miguel and his grandfather lived in a small coastal town in Cebu, Philippines. Their house was humble. Wooden walls, tin roof, and a front porch that faced the sea. Miguel had grown up hearing his grandfather sing old Tagalog songs every morning while fixing nets or cleaning his fishing boat. One rainy night, when the storm winds howled outside, Miguel found his grandfather sitting quietly, looking at an old photograph of a younger version of himself holding a guitar. "Lolo, who's that?" Miguel asked. "That's me," Ramon said, smiling faintly. "Long time ago, I used to sing in small bars, before I met your Lola." "Why did you stop singing?" "Because I had to work," he replied softly. "Music didn't feed the family. The sea did." Miguel sat beside him silently. Then he whispered, "Maybe one day, you can sing again. I'll sing with you." Ramon chuckled. "Maybe, Anik, maybe." That promise became their quiet ritual. Every evening after school, Miguel would come home and sing while his Lolo played the guitar. Sometimes, they sang for the neighbors, sometimes, just for themselves. Then one day, a local talent scout from Manila heard them singing at a small town event. He was deeply moved and encouraged them to audition for AGT's International Special, a season that welcomed acts from around the world. Ramon hesitated. "We can't afford to travel," he said. But their whole town came together. People donated small amounts. Fishermen, vendors, teachers, all chipping in to help them buy plane tickets. When they finally arrived in America, they carried not just their dream, but the hopes of their entire community. The night before their audition, Miguel sat by the hotel window, looking at the city lights. "Lolo," he whispered, "are you scared?" Ramon smiled. "I am, a little. But you know what? Singing with you makes me brave." Miguel grinned. "Then we'll be brave together." That's the spirit they brought to the AGT stage, and it was that courage, wrapped in love and music, that had moved the world. As the days went by after the golden buzzer, news outlets covered their story. They were invited on talk shows, interviewed by local networks, and received messages from Filipinos all around the globe. But amid all the fame, they remained humble. Ramon still carried the same old guitar, the one with scratches and faded wood. Miguel still called him Lolo in every interview, never partner or performer. When the AGT semifinals arrived, fans around the world tuned in to see if they could recreate the magic of their audition. The stakes were higher now. This time, they chose to sing another Filipino classic, Buwan, a song about love for country and hope for freedom. Simon looked at them before the performance and said, "Last time, you gave us something beautiful. Tonight, whatever happens, just sing from your heart again." The stage went dark. A single spotlight illuminated the grandfather and grandson standing side by side. The song began with a gentle piano melody. Ramon started the first verse, his voice more confident this time. Ang bayan kong Pilipinos. The words filled the hall like a prayer. The audience was silent once again, spellbound. Miguel joined in, harmonizing with his Lolo perfectly. Their voices soared together, blending in a way that seemed almost divine. And as the song built up to its final notes, images of the Philippines appeared on the screen: mountains, children playing, fishermen at sea, families gathered under the sun. When they finished, the audience rose again, thunderous applause echoing through the theater. Even before the judges spoke, everyone could feel it. This wasn't just another performance. It was a message of love, resilience, and home. Simon pressed his hands together and bowed his head for a moment before looking up. "You did it again," he said softly. "There's something in your music that goes beyond words. You made all of us feel something powerful." Heidi added, "You made us travel through your memories, your roots, your story. That's what great art does. It connects people from different worlds." Howie smiled. "I think you're showing the world that the heart of music doesn't come from fame or age. It comes from love." Sophia clapped her hands. "That was even better than your first audition." Miguel and his grandfather looked at each other, smiling through tears. In interviews, Simon confessed that watching them made him feel something he hadn't felt in years, a pure connection to family. "I didn't just see singers," he said in one interview, "I saw love between generations. That's what this show is all about." As the finals approached, Miguel and his grandfather felt both excitement and fear. They were far from home, but their hearts were full of gratitude. Back in Cebu, their neighbors hung banners with their faces, and every night, people gathered around a small television to watch reruns of their performances. For their town, they had already won. On the night of the grand finals, the energy inside the AGT theater was electric. Thousands of people filled the seats, and millions watched live from around the world. Simon sat at the judges' table, his expression unusually tender. He knew this would be a special performance. Backstage, Miguel stood nervously, adjusting his small microphone. His Lolo placed a hand on his shoulder. "You ready, Anik?" Ramon asked softly. Miguel nodded, his voice trembling. "I'm scared, Lolo." Ramon smiled. "That's good. It means you care. But remember, we're not here to win. We're here to sing, to thank the world for listening." Miguel took a deep breath and hugged his grandfather. "Let's make them feel home." The stage lights dimmed once more. The announcer's voice echoed through the theater. "Please welcome back, from the Philippines, Ramon and Miguel." The audience cheered as the two walked onto the stage, hand in hand once again. Simon leaned forward. "I've been looking forward to this," he whispered. The host asked gently, "What will you be performing for your final act?" Miguel answered, his voice soft but steady. "We'll sing a song called Tanging Yaman. It means, my only treasure." The crowd quieted, and the orchestra began to play. A soft piano opened the melody, joined by a string quartet. The lights bathed the stage in gold, as if the heavens themselves were watching. Ramon began the first line. His voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion. "Sa aking buhay," he sang, his tone full of sincerity. Miguel joined him moments later, his young, angelic voice soaring above his grandfather's. Their harmonies wrapped around the theater like a warm embrace. The lyrics spoke of gratitude, of cherishing the people who truly matter, of realizing that the greatest riches are not money or fame, but love and family. As they sang, the screen behind them projected home videos, snippets of their real life. There was Ramon teaching Miguel to fish, Miguel helping his Lolo fix a broken boat, a family dinner under flickering lights, laughter, hugs, and sunsets by the sea. The audience was in tears. Even the judges, hardened by years of show business, couldn't hold back. Heidi wiped her face openly. Sophia clasped her hands over her heart. Howie was whispering, "Unbelievable." But it was Simon who was the most affected. He stared at them with glistening eyes, completely still. For a moment, it seemed like he had forgotten there was a camera on him. As the final verse approached, the music swelled. Raymond's voice began to waver, not from exhaustion but from tears threatening to escape. Miguel reached out, holding his grandfather's hand mid-song. That gesture, pure, spontaneous, full of love, made the entire audience gasp. Together they sang the final line, "Tanging Yaman Ko, Ikaw." When the last note faded, the room was utterly silent again. Then, suddenly, the entire audience stood up, a standing ovation louder than any that season. Simon stood too, applauding with both hands, eyes still misty. The golden lights reflected in his tears as he mouthed the words, "Beautiful. Just beautiful." Miguel and Ramon bowed deeply. Then, overcome with emotion, Miguel hugged his grandfather tightly and whispered, "We did it, Lolo." Ramon whispered back, "You made me young again." As confetti from previous acts still sparkled faintly on the stage, the judges shared their final thoughts. Heidi spoke first, her voice trembling. "I don't think anyone here will forget this performance. You brought the world together with a song from your heart." Sophia added, "There is nothing more powerful than love that crosses generations. You didn't just sing, you told a story of every family in the world." Howie smiled warmly. "You've shown everyone that fame doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. What matters is what you leave behind in people's hearts. And tonight, you left something that will last forever." Finally, Simon leaned forward, taking a deep breath. "You two are the heart of this season. You reminded me, and I think everyone here, that success isn't about winning a trophy. It's about moments like this. Moments that make us remember what it means to love and to live." The crowd erupted in applause again. As the cameras faded to black for commercial break, Simon quietly stood up and walked backstage. The producers followed him, curious. They found him waiting near the curtains as Ramon and Miguel walked off stage, holding hands, still shaking from emotion. Simon approached them, no cameras rolling now, just a man speaking from his heart. "You know," he said softly, "I lost my mother years ago. She was the one who taught me music. Watching you two tonight, it felt like she was here again." Ramon placed a hand over his heart. "That means so much, Sir Simon." "Thank you." Simon smiled faintly. "No, thank you. You've reminded me why I love this job. You made all of us remember our families. You've already won, no matter what happens tomorrow." He hugged both of them tightly, something he rarely ever did with contestants. The cameras weren't needed, the moment itself was priceless. The next evening, the AGT Grand Finale results show aired. The atmosphere was filled with suspense. The 10 finalists stood on stage, holding hands as the results were announced one by one. When it came down to the final 2 acts, it was between a massive dance group and Ramon and Miguel. The crowd chanted their names, cheers and hope mixing in every voice. The host looked at the card, then smiled widely. "America has voted, and the winner of this season's America's Got Talent is..." A pause that felt like eternity filled the hall. Ramon and Miguel. The theater exploded in cheers. Miguel screamed, hugging his grandfather as golden confetti rained down once again, this time not from a judge's buzzer, but from victory itself. Ramon broke down completely, falling to his knees as his grandson hugged him tightly, both sobbing uncontrollably. Simon stood up again, clapping with his whole heart. He walked up to the stage once more, this time joined by the other judges. "You deserve this," Simon said, his voice cracking slightly. "You brought the world together." Ramon, through tears, said into the microphone, "We didn't come here to win. We came here to sing for everyone who forgot their dreams. I am an old man, but tonight, I feel young again. Thank you, America." Miguel added, "This is for every grandpa, every grandma, and every kid who loves them." The crowd roared again, the entire stage glowing with gold and emotion. Back home in Cebu, fireworks lit the sky as their community celebrated. Their small fishing town, once quiet and humble, was now alive with music and laughter. The neighbors who helped fund their trip gathered at the beach with radios and phones, cheering as they watched their hometown heroes win. Weeks later, when they returned home, the entire town met them at the pier. Children waved flags, mothers cried, and elders smiled proudly. Reporters followed them, but Ramon ignored the cameras, bending down to touch the ground in gratitude as he whispered, "Salamat, Dios ko." Miguel looked up at him, his eyes wide with wonder. "Lolo, you did it." Ramon shook his head. "No, Anik, we did it." Their story became legendary. They were invited to perform around the world, from London to Japan, from Manila to New York. But no matter how big the stages got, they always carried the same old guitar and the same message. Family, love, and music will always outshine fame. In one of their last interviews of the season, a journalist asked, "What's next for you both?" Miguel looked at his grandfather, who smiled and said, "We go home. We fish again, we sing again, and we keep dreaming, even if we're old." Simon Cowell himself appeared in that interview via video message. "Ramon and Miguel, you've reminded us what truly matters. The music industry needs more hearts like yours. Thank you for making us all feel something real." The following year, AGT invited them as guest performers for the next season's premiere. This time, they performed a special song written just for them, a blend of English and Tagalog lyrics that told their story. When they finished, the entire crowd sang along, and Simon stood again, leading the applause. Months later, when Raymond's health began to decline, Miguel would visit his bedside every day, singing softly the same songs they had once sung together under the golden lights. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the sea, Ramon smiled at his grandson and whispered, "Remember, Anik, when you sing, sing with love. That's the only thing people truly hear." Miguel nodded, tears falling onto his grandfather's hand. "I promise, Lolo." When Ramon finally passed peacefully in his sleep, the whole town mourned him like family. On the day of his funeral, Miguel stood on that same beach where they used to sing and performed, "Anik, one more time, this time alone, but not lonely." His voice carried over the waves, soft and strong, echoing into the horizon. That performance was filmed and uploaded online. Within hours, millions of people watched it, crying and leaving messages of love and remembrance. Simon Cowell himself shared it, writing, "He made us cry once more." Music never dies when it's sung from love. Years later, Miguel grew up and became a music teacher. In his classroom, he kept his grandfather's guitar on the wall, scratched, worn, but full of memories. Whenever he taught new students, he told them the same words Ramon once told him, "Sing with love." That's all that matters. Sometimes, on special days, Miguel would take out that guitar, strum it gently, and whisper to the air, "We did it, Lolo." The sound of waves outside his window always seemed to answer back, like his grandfather's voice still lived in the music they once shared. And somewhere in the heart of every person who watched them, the story of Ramon and Miguel remained, a reminder that dreams never expire, that music heals generations, and that love, when sung truthfully, becomes immortal. Because sometimes, the most beautiful songs are not written in studios or performed on massive stages. Sometimes, they're born in the quiet homes by the sea, between an old man and a child, carried forever by the echo of love. And that's what made Simon Cowell, and millions around the world, cry, not just because of a song, but because of what it stood for: family, hope, and love that never ends.